Hi, welcome back to MOG Economics YouTube channel. Hope you guys are doing great today, right? So, of course, my name is Mr. Oluwale Godwin, and I'm here to help you out with a topic titled the GDP deflator and the consumer price index. So, the thing is that before now, you must have gone through classes, or at least a class on nominal GDP and real GDP, and of course, you must have come across classes on what GDP even is in the very first instance and things that GDP measures, things that GDP does not measure. Why is GDP a very good criteria for measuring economic growth or for measuring economic performance, and why is it not? And all of that. But in this particular video, that is none of our business. So what we want to do is like look at two similar things called the CPI, otherwise known as the Consumer Price Index, and then the GDP deflator, otherwise known as the Gross Domestic Product deflator. All right, and the two of them are also used in measuring inflation rates, which we are still going to do soon. So, what does the CPI mean? What does it measure? So, the Consumer Price Index, otherwise known as the Pache Index, which I've written here, right, is Pache or whatever. I think what's more important to me is that I know how to spell it, right? Paasche, right? Pache Index. So what it measures is it measures the average price of consumption. So what that simply means is that it measures the average price of the goods and services that a typical household consumes in a given economy. But households are the ones that are um, consuming things. All right, that are consuming things. Anyway, so that's what the CPI measures. It's just looking at okay everything that everybody's consuming, the household are consuming. So what is the average price? It's not find mean. Of course, not find mean. So if I find if I say find the mean of 2 and 6, that's going to be 2 plus 6, 8 divided by 2, which is 4, right? So that's what this guy is trying to do. So he just gets the price of all the goods and services that households are consuming in a given economy, find the average, whatever. And so we now tell okay on average this and that and that and that. So I've said it's the same as the partial index. So what it used to do is it is used to measure the cost of living of citizens in a country. So if you have a very high CPI from what you had previously, then that means that on average, the price of goods and services that a typical household consumes have risen. The prices or the price has risen. So which is a bad indicator in the economy. So that's giving you an indication of inflation, right? And then it affects purchasing power, standard of living, and whatever. All right, then the other one is what we call the GDP deflator. Now, gross domestic product. So it's just talking about output produced in an economy. So for this, it is talking about the measurement of the average price of production, the measurement of the average price of the goods and services produced in an economy. So you may now be wondering, ah, why are we studying these two things? Are they not the same? So they are not the same. They have a couple of differences. But before we get to that, I want you to also know that the GDP deflator is also called the last period's index or last periods. I don't know how they form these names. I don't know. Or you call it the implicit deflator, the implicit price deflator. So I'm giving you all of these nomenclatures because by the time you start writing exams, a question might just tell you to calculate the implicit deflator. So you may not be wondering, is it the CPI or the GDP deflator is telling me to calculate? A question might calculate the last period's index. Okay, could say the partial index. So like what exactly am I supposed to do here? I'm confused. And nobody's gonna tell you anything in the examination or under normal circumstances. So I'm just giving all of these things for you to know what to do. So what are a couple of differences between the two? Now you see point number one, which I wrote, is actually a lot of things. It's actually three things. I just for the sake of space, I just kind of how to bring it together. And then I'm going to tell you what it's talking about. Output produced versus consumed. Now, the issue is that for GDP deflator, it measures only output produced in a given economy, right? While the CPI measures output consumed in an economy. So, why? So, one key difference is that not all output produced are consumed by households, are consumed by households in an economy. There are things that we call intermediate goods. They are output of a company that is serving as the raw material or the input for another company. All right, so that is one reason why your GDP deflator and CPI will not give you the same answer. Because for the GDP deflator, some of the output produced in an economy didn't go directly to the households. it went into production of goods and services by another company, right? So that is one difference there, that not all outputs produced are consumed by households. That's one. Then number two, not all outputs consumed by households are produced in the economy. So there's something known as imports. All right. So sometimes, also not even sometimes, in all countries, except your country is blocking trade entirely, like no international trade, except that. But once your borders are open to other countries, your citizens are going to import goods and services. So some of the things that people are consuming in your economy were not produced by your economy, or they were not produced in your economy. So that's another reason why your GDP deflator and your CPI would vary. Okay, it won't be the same thing. Now, number three, still within this, number one. So if you were to be explaining an examination, what I'm saying right now is kind of what you're going to be saying, not output produced versus consumed, right? So you can have 3 points in case you ask like states, explain, discuss five differences between the CPI, the CPI and the last year's index or whatever. Okay, so number three, not all output produced in an economy are domestically consumed. That is, there are output produced in an economy that are meant for export. So in that case, your GDP deflator and the consumer price index would also not give you the same answer. All right, number two now, there's basket of goods. Now, what does basket of goods mean? The CPI uses basket of goods, the GDP deflator does not, right? So, basket of goods is just talking about the compilation of certain goods and services that are unique to all households in a particular economy, like basic things that households are consuming in a particular economy. So, you could have food, okay, in that basket. You know what a basket is, right? And if you're packing a basket of fruit, apples, oranges, pawpaw, guinea corn. Oh, sorry, guinea corn is not a fruit. Mangoes, whatever. So a basket of, we're just talking about, okay, what are the things that a household in an economy typically consumes? So and it might vary from country to country. So like basically should have an amount of food, not necessarily luxury food, right? But then a basic level of food that you should consume so that you don't die, right? Or so that we don't die. So you have that. Okay, what an household should spend on energy, right? What an household should spend on transportation. So transportation, energy consumption, food consumption, accommodation. It could have basic education as well. Health, right? Health consumption. Those basic things that are unique to households. So that is what you have in a basket of a typical basket of good. Now, like I said, it's the CPI that uses a basket of goods. It uses a fixed basket of goods. That is, once it has been drawn, that okay, this is a basket that contains the things that a household consume on average in our country. Then that basket of goods can be used for 5 years, right? So this item, that item, that item. So you can have about a couple of items, 10, 15, 20, whatever. So once that's been made like that, they could just be using that fixed basket of goods for the next 5 years or the next 10 years. But then it should be revised because you keep having more goods and services in a given economy. So CPI uses a fixed basket of goods, but then GDP does not use a fixed basket of goods. GDP deflator rather, just focuses on um, all kind of goods that are placed in an economy, which can be very different. So some businesses would come up newly in your economy, right? Some businesses will leave your economy, whether they found greener pastures somewhere, or they couldn't run profitably, or whatever. So you have businesses going out, businesses coming in. So those things are going to reflect in the kind of goods and the quality of goods that you have in your economy. So all of those changes are going to be captured in your GDP deflator, but your consumer price index doesn't capture those things. Once it has fixed a basket, it continues to use that basket. And I believe that you must be thinking in your mind that wouldn't that be a problem, right? Sometimes, people can stop buying something and they can start buying a new one and this and that. So I believe that if you've not yet gone through the class on CPI, where we introduce CPI ordinarily, I think you should kind of go back to it, look for it, or research on why the CPI overstates or why the CPI might not be a good measure for measuring inflation. So what we said now is people might decide not to buy a product and they might substitute that product for another product. So the basket of goods would have changed. But then the CPI is just looking at it that there is an increment in the expenditure of consumers on a particular basket of goods without taking into cognizance the fact that consumers have actually left a particular good that is still in the basket to go for a cheaper product. So in that case, say we have a substitution bias, where citizens also typically have gone for other goods and stopped consuming some goods or have replaced some goods in the fixed basket by another goods. But then in the measurement of the CPI, it is not captured because the CPI uses a fixed basket of goods. So that is what we call the substitution bias. Substitution has already taken place, but the CPI is not considering that. Now, the second thing why CPI might not be really be a good measure of measuring inflation, I'm just quickly saying it here, so we call quality bias. So sometimes, let's say CPI contains yam, or let's say let's say yeah, everybody should know what a yam looks like. CPI contains yam, and then yam last year was 500 naira. No, don't let me even say yam. Let's say computers. CPI contains computers, and last year a typical computer was 70,000 naira, but this year a typical computer is 100,000 naira. So the CPI just is a suspicious police officer. Just look at it. Hmm, I caught you. You've increased your price. Right, so consumers are now paying 100,000 naira for something that they should be paying 70,000 naira. There's inflation, but that might not be the issue. Okay, the issue might be that consumers are actually willingly and joyfully paying that 100,000 because the kind of computers you have now are doing greater things than the kind of computers that used to be. So you don't just say computer, like there might have been a significant increment in the quality of computers, right? That would make consumers to spend more on them. So in the real sense of it, consumers are actually paying what the computer worth. It's not that maybe there is inflation or no. People just look at it. Okay, this product is really wonderful, and they are willing to pay that kind of amount for it. When a CPI's police officer just looks at that and say, "Oh, you've increased that. I caught you there. I saw what you did," and that's inflation. So in that case, we say we have quality bias. Quality bias, where the quality of one of the products in the feast basket has increased, but the CPI does not capture it. So there's a third one I've forgotten. I'm not supposed to forget because I don't know, I've forgotten human beings. And so we could just research on that. There are three reasons why the CPI may not be a good indicator of inflation and economy. So if you get the third one, you can just leave it in the comment section and that settles that. All right, so we mentioned that CPI uses a fixed basket of goods, and then GDP deflator does not, and we've been able to explain what a fixed basket of goods is. Now, in terms of time focus, the GDP deflator is calculated quarterly, while the CPI is calculated monthly. So don't. Okay, I think that's cool. Now we have the formulas here. For GDP deflator, the formula is nominal GDP over real GDP times 100 over 1. Again, you must have gone through what a nominal GDP is and what a real GDP is. And then for the CPI on its own, it has the current value of the fixed basket of goods divided by the previous or the past value or a base year value because you must have been making reference to a particular year. So if this is 2024 and then wants to like make reference to price of goods and services or the worth of goods and services in 2020, so 2020 represents our base year. So whatever we get is going to be the base year value of the same basket of goods, right? And then in 2024, we'll be looking at the current market value of that basket of goods. So if there is a change in the two, we find the percentage changes and then we use that to get our inflation. Okay, so that's that. In our next lesson, we're talking about calculation. So I have calculation question that will guide us on how to apply this formula, and you will see that there would be a small difference between the value that GDP deflator will give you, right, and the value that the CPI will give you. But they are going to be close usually. They are going to be close. So that's that. See you in the next video. Thank you for watching this. I hope to see you next time. Bye and have fun.